Hey guys, what is up and welcome to a new NVIDIA daily update video. So today, as per usual, let's go over NVIDIA stock. Let's go over what is happening with NVIDIA stock, even though it's really not a whole lot, to be completely honest with you. I'll give you my thoughts moving into next week, and we'll go over the weekly chart as well today. So if you enjoyed, don't forget to hit that like button. This is not financial advice. I am not a financial advisor. And of course, if you enjoy my technical analysis, charts, updates, etc., I do share my thoughts with my members every single day as the market is open, as the market is trading. Again, every single day. That link is down below to the YouTube subscription for just $3 a month, gives you access to the Tesla tier. The second tier, of course, gives you access for $5 a month, gives you access to Tesla plus NVIDIA. And the third tier for $7 a month gives you access to Tesla NVIDIA plus non-Tesla, non-NVIDIA stocks that I share. Charts of that seem to be like in a good position to, potentially enter a trade, etc. Essentially, I share opportunities in other stocks. And on the weekend, I do chart requests with members in Tier 3 on Discord. But jumping into it, NVIDIA closing the day up with a nice 1.24%, closing at 141.72. Again, it's kind of just continuing to do the same thing. Now, I mentioned yesterday how, it was kind of closing outside, but it wasn't too convincing. And NVIDIA would need a pretty nice gap up this morning to continue staying above the trend line. That's exactly what we got. We pretty much got a beautiful gap up this morning, and it actually still ended up closing pretty much right at the trend line. But you can see every time it's getting up to these ranges right here, like look at this consistent selling pressure. This is consistent selling pressure. Now, the good news is the fact that each time it's getting rejected, it is making arguably a higher low-ish, right? From here, then kind of here, now kind of here, right? So that's good, but it is starting to lose the trend line. And again, same as yesterday, if NVIDIA does not get a nice gap up, and I mean a nice gap up, like a gap up that's like, in my opinion, at least like 143 or higher gap up, which would be actually pretty bullish if it somehow gets that. But if it doesn't, it will most likely start, or especially a gap down, it will most likely start now opening up below the trend line for the first time, again, since this very aggressive trend line uptrend has begun all the way from down here. So let's watch for that moving forward, right? And of course, we have that 8 exponential moving average, which is currently sitting at about 139. Obviously, it'll move up a little bit on Monday, but about 139, we'll say, right, is a pretty important level. Also, I don't like the fact that NVIDIA is, as it's moving up, is going down on lower volume, lower volume. Not a fan of that as well as it's moving to the upside. So that's also making me a little bit worried. And overall, my thought process on NVIDIA just hasn't changed, right? Unfortunately, again, the stock just isn't really doing a whole lot. I wish I can update more, but yeah, I mean, it still has the bearish divergences, right? The RSI and the MACD are still making lower lows, while technically the stock is pretty much making its way to the up and right section of the screen slowly but surely. That's a bit of a concern for me, right? And again, to me personally speaking, the risk reward just isn't it here, right? It's not it. On top of that, I did see some a decent, like a 4 million NVIDIA put that came in, 1.2 million call, but this is for June 20th, which is pretty good. 150 strike, that is pretty bullish, but I can't ignore this one that's 4 million in puts for 145 strike, but this is for next week, right? Someone got these for next week, so that's a little bit interesting. So let's see how that plays out moving into next week. But this is kind of the main thing I'm looking at right now for NVIDIA, right? Once it loses this trendline plus 8 EMA, which again, about below 139 roughly, that would be the sign of, okay, now momentum has probably finally, fallen off, right? And we begin our correction. And again, nothing wrong with this, right? That's perfectly normal. It's a bullish correction. I would still view NVIDIA to be extremely bullish. Even if NVIDIA comes down to my main target where I personally get really interested, which again is all the way down here, somewhere around the low 120s, we'll say roughly, give or take, of course. Even the 130 wouldn't be too bad, but I personally get very interested all the way down here, right? That's where I get extremely interested in NVIDIA. And I'm like, okay, now we're talking. Why is that important? Because, well, if I come back to the weekly, this is where things are a little bit more interesting to me right now, at least. Yeah, the chart's bullish. It's a beautiful breakout of this wedge, and all the low 120s would do is essentially just a retest of this breakout and the exponential moving averages, right? And that's all I would view it as, at least as of right now, right? MACD was with a bullish crossover. Stochastic down here, you can see, is nice and bullish. So the stock is bullish. There's no question about that. Even if it comes down to 130 or even the low 120s, it's still bullish. Absolutely no questions asked, at least as of right now. Obviously, things can change, but as of right now, I would view any pullback, especially a major pullback to 120s, especially, yeah, I still think it's bullish. I think there's actually nothing wrong with that whatsoever, because that's just how things move. Things always move in zigzag, right? They always move in zigzag. You can almost make an argument that we're kind of like right around here, beautiful pullback, and then I think this will actually play out. Like, that's actually not a bad way to look at it, right? I can absolutely make an argument. This right here is pretty much that right there. This potential downside move that we may be getting, obviously not to this level or extent or whatever, but something similar, right? Yeah, I would view that as very bullish. And then honestly, something like this after that wouldn't also surprise me as well, right? That'll look something like this, right? Give or take is what I would expect for NVIDIA. And then at the very least, I would expect a retest of all-time highs, if not all-time highs in general, right? Sometime later this year. Probably towards the end of the year, but nonetheless, right? So yeah, I mean, that's just kind of what I'm seeing for the stock right now. Again, it is what it is. That's just my honest opinion, my honest, thoughts on the chart, I guess. But again, there's nothing wrong with that. If that actually does happen, in my opinion, it's still very bullish. A lot of people get very scared when these people say this stock doesn't go down, but that's just how things move. It's a bullish retracement. It's perfectly normal. Nothing wrong with that. And that's just kind of how she goes. But yeah, all in all, that's all I got for you. Not much more to update. Again, the stock hasn't been doing too much. But to the upside, again, I want to make it clear, if we continue grinding to the upside, we get a gap up, a nice gap up on Monday morning, blah, 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 and we continue grinding above the 8 exponential moving average, above this trend line, and we just continue not losing both of them combined, the main target is still going to be closer to 147. So in other words, if NVIDIA gets above 143 and closes a daily candle above 143, that even further increases the probabilities of seeing 147 to 148. But closing a daily candle below 139 substantially increases the probability that these divergences finally play out and we most likely begin our move to the downside. I personally lean to the downside, but that's just my opinion, right? That's my honest thoughts. So anyways, thanks for watching. See you all on Monday. Peace.